Okay, everyone. This is the Communications Committee for the State Bar, and the first thing I need to do is read the Ethics Act statement. It is the duty of the committee members to avoid conflicts of interest and appearances of conflicts of interest in performing the duties as a member of the Communications Committee in North Carolina State Bar. Any member of the committee who is aware of any personal conflicts or appearances thereof with respect to the matters before this committee should disclose those at the meeting. Any conflicts from anyone? No? Okay, great. Well, you can see that this committee's got a lot of oomph and power since we're 4 o'clock on Monday. But we have a couple of, actually, we've had a lot of really good and cool developments over the past quarter since our last virtual meeting in July. I'm really hoping this is our last virtual meeting because I miss you all. But speaking of communications, just a little off topic and a little off the agenda before I get to the approval of the prior agenda. I hope everyone saw Alice's notice about the passing of Nick Dumbalis. He was one of the good guys. And I hope that you all will take the opportunity to reach out to his family and express condolences. I enjoyed some time actually earlier today with some Wake County folks reminiscing about him and just what a great lawyer and an even better human being he was. So I just wanted to say that first. In the packet, which is a short packet, so hopefully you were able to get to the minutes, you have a copy of the minutes from our July meeting. Hopefully you've had a chance to review them. And if so, is there a motion with respect to the minutes?
I move for adoption of the minutes.
Second that motion.
Okay, so do we have to vote on the approval of the minutes?
Yes, and it would be
All right.
nice to use the check marks to check.
Yep. On your participant button, right?
Yes.
Okay, so all in favor of approval of the July 2020 minutes, please indicate by checking the yes button. And if you do not approve, check no. Are we good there?
That passes.
All right, perfect. That passes. Okay. So the first substantive item on the agenda is sort of a recap of what has gone on since our last meeting in various sort of communication capacities. And the first topic that I wanted to cover and sort of update that I wanted to cover was what we have done as far as live streaming with the State Bar. You also have in your materials a list, I think it's a comprehensive list of all of the various meetings and subcommittee meetings that have been live streamed since the prior meeting. I'm hoping you were able to view a lot of those. Guys, can you talk a little bit about sort of what you've seen as far as increase in participation and viewership on these meetings?
Yeah, I'll take that, Heidi. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, you have this this list in your materials of all the different live stream meetings, and this is something that really, you know, we talk about the little silver linings that we find to COVID. This is one of them. We have been able to live stream our meetings in a way that we've never been able to do before because we are utilizing a platform like Zoom. And so we have been live streaming all of these different meetings through our YouTube channel. You can see we had 14 different meetings that were live streamed this past quarter, including 3 of the committee meetings that Mark chairs concerning regulatory change, 2 subcommittees that the subcommittee that Steve chairs concerning the potential adoption of anti-discrimination language into the rules of professional conduct. So we are really kind of able to do something that, like I said, we haven't been able to do before in terms of kind of unprecedented transparency to allow folks to observe all of our different meetings, participate if they want, offer comments if they want. Certainly we have, we've seen some evidence. I don't know if it's more so from the publication of the preamble amendment or if it's from people watching these different these different videos. But if anybody has opened up the ethics committee agenda, you'll see 194 pages of comments that we've received about the preamble or these other proposals that the state bar has been looking at over the past couple of months. To be clear, the 194 pages isn't 194 comments. There's one person that had submitted, I believe, something around like a 40-page brief on the issue, but there's a lot of comments, just to put it that way. But we have seen, you know, on YouTube where we're able to track how many folks view these different streams, and while we are not breaking records, we don't have millions of viewers, you know, we do have a good handful of folks that have been watching and been able to take advantage of the fact that these videos are now saved on our YouTube channel. So all of you, we provided the link there. So if you missed a meeting and you just want to kind of take a look at it, one strikes your interest, or you just want to see what it looks like, you can click on the link directly from the PDF and you can view that meeting. We've seen that, I've looked at those numbers, you know, there's like one video that I think has 40 views, another one that has just, you know, maybe 10 views. But those numbers have gone up, you know, even if it's just kind of 1 or 2 views here and there. So again, this is something that we are able to do because we're meeting by Zoom. It's a way that we're able to make the bar's process, particularly the subcommittee process, more available for observation by the profession and by the public. So we'll be happy to answer any other questions that you have. We will plan to continue doing this to the extent that we can, and to the extent that a meeting, you know, allows this to happen. I'll add that we did actually hold some remote DHC hearings over this past quarter. They are not listed there as publicly available YouTube recordings or anything like that. But if folks could not attend a particular hearing and they were interested to attend, there was a notice on our website for folks to contact the state bar, and they were given the information of how they could observe a DHC hearing. So again, this allows us to do things that we normally haven't done. Of course, the curious thing is going to be, how can we continue to live stream once we're back in the normal setting? That's going to be kind of another question for us to answer. But in the meantime, this is working. It's working well, and we certainly would commend to not just you all, but the folks that you represent, if they have any questions about the state bar's process or just want to see the different members of the council thoughtfully debating these issues, give them this page and tell them to check out one of the meetings.
Thanks, Brian. And I mean, I actually think that this is important and progress that shouldn't be overlooked. I mean, what it's showing is that the word is spreading and it's working. I mean, part of the goal of this committee is communications. So actually, one of the viewers, I think, on the ethics subcommittee, one of the ethics subcommittee live streams was 2 of our new associates, because they said, well, what do you do for the state bar? What does the state bar do? You know, they don't know. They're just out of law school, grateful that they survived the bar, a little less past it. And this gives them an opportunity to see exactly what we do. So for everybody in this committee, I would ask that you continue to spread the word about the ability and the capacity we now have to watch these meetings. And particularly for those of you that are in larger firms, it's easy. You just send an email to all lawyers or whatever yours says, and tell them this is a benefit that frankly not a lot of states have. Brian and I were discussing last week how much we really need to appreciate the transparency of our bar, and on some levels the ease of finding things. I'd ask him to find some comparable data from other states on some issues, and he couldn't even find the website for rules of professional responsibility for some states. So the progress they've made and the transparency of what our regulatory body and our Office of Counsel does should not just be not overlooked, but it should be applauded. They've really done an amazing job. But it's going to get better because we have a new database coming soon, right? All
That's
right.
So what we are really thrilled about is we're about to execute a contract with a company to develop our new regulatory management software. And so that's going to be new databases for CLE, for membership, for the new regulatory management and case management for the Office of Counsel that will all be within one ecosystem. We're thrilled about it. The company is based in Charlotte. They do the database management and regulatory management for the medical board, the board of pharmacy, other boards across the country, nursing board here. And so we're really excited that we found them and seem to be a really good match. Where this ties into communications is that it's going to allow us to have a much better experience for our members, for the lawyers, when using our website. Logging in now, if you were to log in to deal with a CLE invoice or file a CLE report, you have to go through the CLE website and log in to your member page through CLE. But if you also then owed your membership dues, you'd have to log out of CLE and go to the main website and log into your member account through the state bar website. And our goal obviously is to have a one-stop shop for lawyers and paralegals when they need to deal with the state bar. So our aim and what we foresee is that a lawyer will log in through the bar's website and have a landing page that will show all of the lawyer's requirements and responsibilities to maintain active licensure, kind of a progress bar for their CLE that shows where they are for the year and what's still necessary, the ability to pay your dues and any kind of CLE fees all in one transaction and have it be applied appropriately to the correct accounts. We're just really excited for all of that. And then it'll be a lot easier for us to communicate with our lawyers in terms of dues collection, CLE reporting, to be able to send out notifications, filtered out by people who still are outstanding in their dues, and automatic reminders. And we're really just thrilled with this ability to do that. The goal is to have this begin development here in November, and with a rollout to be in mid 2021, with the understanding that that's an ambitious goal, but that's the timetable that we have in mind, and that will help the Office of Counsel and CLE membership. With right now, we're not really a web-based office in terms of our databases, so we've had to use VPNs and remote networks and stuff to get in to use all of our current programming. So being able to access our databases from anywhere, having a cloud-based program is really going to help us. And I think we've all learned the need for that during the last 6 to 8 months. How much better life would be if everything was cloud-based without having to worry about how you're going to get into your database from home and those types of things. But Brian, if you have anything else to add on it, we're pretty excited for it. We demoed a dozen or so different companies and worked closely with a few to figure out where the right choice was, and we're thrilled with the one we found and look forward to this process. And if you guys have ideas on what you would want to see when you log into a bar account, this is the time to send them our way, because it'll help us as we develop our plans for the next 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, I was going to ask if anyone had any questions for Peter or Brian about all the capabilities that this new database was going to have. Now we have to go to several different places to get any and all information regarding our status as a lawyer, and now it's going to be all in one place, which is just pretty incredible and certainly much more convenient, and will be a huge benefit to our constituents and members. But if anyone has particular questions of Peter and Brian, they are super excited about this. They would probably even appreciate some questions.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to add, Heidi, is one of the real big changes for this is going to be online forms and online applications and things that we are still stuck in the paper age in some areas. Specialization, paralegal certification still does a lot of stuff with paper, and this will allow those processes to move all electronic and paperless. So when you're trying to apply to be a specialist and you have a requirement to list peer references. Instead of us getting a list of peer references and printing out the form that the peer references need to fill out and mailing it to them, or however we need to do it now, we can have you provide the list of peer references with their email addresses, and it'll automatically send out the online form right to the peer reference for them to complete and return to the bar, without really too much, human involvement. And so it'll make for a much smoother and more efficient process. We're really excited about that.
And will we be able to, for example, if we're the ones submitting the reference, will we be able to just submit it electronically instead of having to print it and scan it and all that sort of stuff?
Yes, that's the plan.
They'll be more likely to get them back then. Because
And this is going to be better for the public, for response, for complainants and grievances. They'll have a portal to be able to file, their complaints and see a status of their matter, to the extent that is not confidential. And so all of that's going to be better for the public as well.
more transparency.
That's right.
Anyone have any questions about what the new database will be able to do for us? Nope. Okay. Well, looking ahead to sort of what the last quarter holds, I mean, every time I think I've got it figured out, 2020 just turns me on its head. So I hate to even predict tomorrow, or even yesterday for that matter, but in your list of materials, we have started a sort of a running list of podcasts, because this was a project that was important to me. I felt like it was going to hopefully be a really good tool to use these podcasts to connect with our members, to connect with the public, to be able to show some different sides and unique sides of the bar, more importantly, of the people. You might remember at the beginning of the year, who can remember the beginning of the year, pre-COVID, before we even had to start doing this, when we got to meet in person, one of the things that I said I hoped we would be able to do this year was sort of humanize the bar. Obviously, other much more important things became priority, and just being able to keep members informed and figure out how to do all of this virtually, and all the work Brian and Peter had to do to get our meetings up and going and allow us to attend, caused us to necessarily refocus. But I don't want to lose sight of that sort of where we started in the year. And so we hope to have a couple of podcasts lined up. In fact, our first one we are going to work on next Monday. Mark, do you want to tell us a little bit about what we're doing next Monday?
Sure. I'm excited about Monday's podcast. I think we're going to kind of do a Meet the Officers presentation with both Colin and Barbara, kind of the outgoing president and the newest elected officer, and just talk a little bit about what their role is as officers, and get to know them a little bit as people as well. I think one of our missions is to communicate, not only what the state bar does, but who we are. And I thought that would be a fun thing. And Heidi, you're going to be obviously doing that podcast with me. So we're promising to have exciting and sensational questions. So it'll be fun.
Oh yeah. Think town hall, right? No, it's actually Colin and Marcy, because I'm sure Barbara's like, what? Nobody talked to me about that.
I'm sorry, I said I meant yeah,
so don't worry, Barbara, but
Barbara's
yours is
probably
coming in December. In December, you're going to get to talk to us about what 2021 looks like, as if anyone could predict, right? But what your visions for 2021 are. But next week, we're going to take our first shot with Colin and Marcy, and I can tell from the look on Colin's face, he's very excited. He was going to get a haircut for a podcast, which was cute. But it is important to me that, to the extent you all have ideas for podcasts, that you share them with us. The running list, I think, was maybe initially Mark, Ashley was on here. I don't know where she went. She's not on my screen anymore, but Mark, Ashley, and I sort of brainstorming on some podcast ideas. But I mean, this is sort of what this committee, one of the things I'm hoping that you all will do is provide additional ideas for things that you think folks in your districts might want to hear about or might need to hear about. and see what we can put together. So I hope to keep that running list, and feel free to email me or Brian or Peter or Mark about sort of additional ideas that you have. Mark is the expert here, mostly because he's done them. He has had his own podcast. How long have you been doing that, Mark?
We're coming up on 4 years now.
Whoa,
and
okay.
about 70 episodes. So
Right. So every time I have a podcast question, I just go straight to Mark, but his is very fancy. Ours is arguably less so, in part because we have some technological deficiencies, we'll say. So
Heidi, we got Todd's got his hand up.
yep. Oh, hi, Todd. Sorry.
Hi, I just had a question. Hope I didn't miss this. I think the podcast ideas are great. I was just sitting there thinking through it. Can you sort of tell me who are the intended audiences for the podcast and how broadly we're going to publicize that? For example, are we going to try to get it done in certain judicial districts or statewide, or just what's the intended approach here?
Well, I think the intended approach is that eventually where's the podcast being posted, Peter? Is it on the is it just on the website, or?
So it's going to be available right now. The first one that we did, you can get it from iTunes or from Google Music, but we're going to also, once we get a podcast or two down, we will have the links for them available on our website. And we'll share, when a new one's released, we'll be releasing it on social media, with a link like what we did with the first one.
Okay.
Let me ask a question. I think that's a great idea. Are we going to affirmatively reach out beyond social media? For example, I know in Mecklenburg, we have a list of all of our bar members. I mean, are we going to affirmatively try to reach out to our bar members statewide and say, hey, this podcast is coming up, or are we going to try to expect them to learn about it on social media and then join?
So that's a good question, Todd. As far as, the state bar has the ability to send an e-blast out to all the lawyers. We're very careful with that, using it, because one of the issues we run into is if someone unsubscribes from that email, they unsubscribe from all of our emails. And so we can't send them their dues notice. And so that's something that will change with our new system. I'm hoping that we'll have different abilities there as it relates to e-blast. But we've run into some of this stuff where we've sent some emails for different organizations this year in terms of alerting people about things that has led to some unsubscribing that raises some concerns on how, if we're reaching our members. But I think in terms of counselors reaching out to their districts, that's, we can provide the email lists to counselors, their public record. And so in terms of sending an email saying, hey, look what the bar's doing, as far as doing it in our counselor newsletter, even would say, these are the podcasts that are now available. That's stuff we can definitely get out. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
And I've been thinking of ways to better disseminate it. And I know a couple folks like Gordon Brown, when he does his Orange County or his judicial district sort of counselor's newsletter, his is really personalized and he does a great job. And I thought about inquiring whether information on the podcast would be something that we could make sure gets highlighted sort of in the Counselor Corner newsletter.
Good.
And then perhaps Jennifer, where is she? I always have to look around. Jennifer Duncan, if there's anything that we could put in the State Bar Journal, just as a, hey, these are the ones that we've done, might be a good way to get the word out, because that is a lot of the challenge. I mean, that's a huge part of the challenge. And so I appreciate the question, Todd, because I think it's a good one. And I haven't thought about it from a more targeted level. What is your target audience? One of the things that I think we were hoping to do also were some of the local bar events or the DSAs and things like that we could promote on a broader platform. So good question. And I need to think about it a little bit more, but the immediate ideas are the new database, the newsletter, and the journal, as well as our own website.
think about outreach to some of the specialty bars as a way to connect with them and to maybe, have a special podcast for them, or at least invite their members specifically. If we can do it within the confines of what Peter described, but I think outreach to minority bars and women bars and things of that nature might be a way to broaden the net, so to speak, of the state bar generally.
I think that's a good
Dorothy has
idea.
her hand up.
I do think it's best to wait until you have a little bit of content,
That's fine.
maybe 4 episodes, 5 episodes to make the push, right? If you make a big push and they go and they see 1 or 2 episodes, they may say there's not much here. So I think the big push, record the first 4, and then do it when there's a little bit of content. But I'm with you, Todd. I think getting it out, and I like the idea of involving some of the specialty bar folks as guests, because then they circulate it to their membership.
Right.
You kind of get that multiplier effect where you have different people doing it. It's a great idea.
Dorothy?
That's what I was about to say as well. And I threw it in the chat about sending the information out to the local bars. And then they can disseminate the information from there. I know that I still serve on my local bar board, and we're always looking for content, and members are always looking for ways to fill in the know and connect it to the state bar. So like, for instance, we could drop the matters onto the website and then kind of, push them from there. Like Mark said, I think that would be really, really good.
And also the law schools, right? So I think that, again, I've been a proponent of encouraging them and educating them early on, and this is a way to do it. And so I appreciate all of the ideas, any of the suggestions you guys have, both for topics and for ways to reach various stakeholders. I don't think it has to be necessarily limited to lawyers. So that we can make sure folks understand we do really good and hard work, which is where I started the year. But to
if
do
I could add on
that,
that, Heidi, just as one of my partners started a podcast called Tending Bar that is a professionalism oriented podcast geared to law students in particular. And it's called, if you just search for Tending Bar, you can see it. So he's done things like interview Allison Bost, who's in our general counsel office within our firm, about implicit bias and other stuff. He interviewed another one of my partners who did a pro bono death penalty case, but he's covered people outside Wamba Bond Dickinson too in the community. But it is, some of the topics they do might be ones we'd consider, and those are interesting episodes. And again, even if you don't listen, you can go to that website and see them. But I think some of those might be things I could see us doing something like that.
we can also have a catchy contest for the name of our podcasts. All right. But to do any of that stuff, I would like for y'all to consider something as far as the technology goes. I don't know if you have noticed how Peter tends to do these things. He will take his phone and use, I think, microphones that you bought on Amazon for relatively inexpensive amounts of money. And that's how these things get streamed and done. I'm interested in hearing sort of y'all's perspective on improvement of the technology in our building. Sort of my sense, as someone that's probably on the older end of the spectrum, but I can actually remember 2009, which is sort of when the building was built. I think there were a lot of things then that we could not possibly have conceived or perceived of being able to do today. For example, what we're doing and live streaming and sending out podcasts. And so I'm hoping that we can get some encouragement from this committee about taking a look at additional technology that would be helpful. And, Brian, we've talked about this a little bit. Are there particular things or technological advancements or, equipment that would help?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there's, and I kind of touched on one point, perhaps unintentionally, when I was talking about live streaming, that when we go back in the building, we've talked about live streaming our committee meetings for years now. But we always ran into the issue of how do we capture the audio in an effective manner in these large rooms without setting up microphones all over the place and potentially catching all the little side comments or anything like that. So, it's just become that challenge. Of course, this platform allows us to focus in on a single speaker and easily stream that. But Heidi, you're right. We've been doing a lot of this stuff so far with our phones, Peter's phone or my phone, and just trying to make it work. But and it has worked. The phones we have are pretty amazing pieces of technology, but we are running into some limitations. Like we've had some issues for example, I think the opioid summit was a good example of a very public event. And really, if it were not for the help of AOC, we would have been stuck as far as a good broadcast of that event, and a very worthy event of being broadcast and watched by a number of other folks. But it's because we have some limitations within the building, just miking the rooms properly, or being able to kind of take our live streaming on the road if it's necessary to go to a council meeting somewhere outside of Raleigh, maybe a DSA event, things of that nature. So we kind of have, I guess, Peter and I over the years have kind of just, made comments and have ideas in our head of things that we could do to improve the technology. But I think there are just steps that we could take to improve the transparency. If our goal is transparency of the bar and to communicate the work that's going on inside of the bar, I think there are some things that we can do to really equip the staff and equip the building to do just that and broadcast the work of the bar outside of this building.
Okay, so how are you handling, for example, DHC hearings?
So I'll do that. I'll tell you how we're doing the next one. So if it's a DHC hearing that is all on Zoom, like all the parties are on Zoom, then that's easy enough. But if the ones that are going to be in the building, for instance, we have a hearing coming up next month that is going to receive a fair amount of media attention and public attention, and we're certainly not. We would love to limit the number of people coming into our building for it right now. Obviously, and people probably don't want to have to come into the building to watch a hearing right now for all of the reasons you can imagine. So our goal is to try to create some sort of stream for it to allow people to at the very least, listen to the hearing. And so you'd think it's not as easy as I'd hoped. We don't have a plug that you just plug in to tap into the audio of our courtroom to be able to stream it out. I did find a way to tap into one of our devices that can create a audio stream that I can then play out of a speaker that I can then pick up from my phone and stream out onto YouTube. And so that's what we're going to do for November. It's a really, long way around something that should be an easier process, but we're going to make it work. But this is a great example of something that could be fixed over the next few months or early in 2021 that would allow us to make it a lot easier for the media or others to be able to get our information out from the building. We haven't had that issue in past hearings before. When they're a big notable hearing, we rely on WRAL or some other media company comes in because they want to broadcast it, so they bring their own equipment and set it all up, and that works. But if we don't have some sort of media person coming to do that, then we've got to find a way to get that info out.
Anna?
Hey, just a quick question, just generally, you said the DHC is being done on Zoom, and I'm just wondering, the court system, like comp hearings and stuff, is all WebEx, and I didn't know, we aren't subject to any requirement to be on WebEx versus Zoom, are we? How did it, or okay, we just can do whatever we want. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, and to be clear, we're not broadcasting these DHC hearings widely. Like I said, if somebody contacts us because they want to observe, then we can give them the link where they can view it. But we have not been putting this just kind of out for the world to see, because we're not trying to make a DHC hearing this publicly, just this public event that could, is a very difficult thing for somebody to go through, whether you're the defendant or whoever you are in the process. So we are making it available to comply with the Open Meetings Act, but we're not trying to broadcast it out on our main YouTube page.
Yeah, and that's something, that's a policy decision that this committee has taken over the years that we'll, continue to always revisit is how much to publicize and stream out the disciplinary hearings. That's, something that we've always been careful to do.
Dorothy?
Have you all checked into, well, I'm sure you have, what have you found to be the cost of the devices that you think would be ideal? Like what I was immediately thinking of is like what we have at the law school. In particular, we have a conference room that has the device where the camera is kind of centrally located and it's all connected up with all the computers and everything. So we've worked with Zoom for many, many years before Zoom mania came about. And so whenever someone is speaking in that room, it automatically zooms in on that person and their voice. And okay, Peter, you're shaking your head, so you've already kind of.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have used that at your school too. And I think something like that, we're going to need to talk to experts about this. What's the best way to fit up a courtroom to be able to see the different tables and get the audio from the different panels. In terms of another live streaming option, when we talk to the AOC, our friends there who have helped us so much, they got their camera and audio board and all the things like that for a relatively low price. And so we would certainly talk to them about the ones that we would use to be able to be more mobile. It's not going to be as easy as we would want this to be. We can't just buy all this stuff and have it all set up, because the building, when it was built, a lot of the stuff was hardwired into the building. A lot of our current stuff, all of the the little handheld devices are all built into the walls, and all of the wiring is in the floor below the courtroom floor and the ceiling. And so, it's going to be quite a project. I do think this is probably the right time for it, because if we're not going to be in the building for a while, then it would be a lot easier to do this kind of work. But we need to, you're right. We need to look at what our options are, but that's the kind of thing we were thinking of, to be able to jump around to different people. That's the exact kind of thought we were looking at.
And if I can just,
yeah.
Well, I was just going to add, Heidi, I think one of the things we would do is absolutely get a consultant on this. Peter and I know enough to be dangerous kind of thing, but we're not the experts. So we would definitely need to consult with somebody, especially with regards to using like the equipment that you described, Dorothy, which I've used being in a meeting there myself, and I was very impressed with. That's one of the ideas that we've had about putting in a conference room. Might not work for the big courtroom. And so each room is going to need its own setup essentially, but there's options, but we hope to find an expert that can truly guide us through this process.
Right. And how this came up, Dorothy read my mind. Yes, I would like your support in doing what we can to help them get better equipment. This came up when we were talking about sort of the podcast and what we could and couldn't do, and how we're going to have to do that. And as little as I really know about technology, I was sort of surprised at the limitations we had. And I think as counselors, it is meaningful if we support improvements in this regard. And I think it is the wave of the future, even for those of us who struggle with it, and that it is important to make sure that they can do what they need to do to increase sort of our transparency and provide information to our stakeholders about what we do. So I would like for you all to think about that and hopefully provide actual verbal, and this is coming from me, not them, to provide support for some technological improvements in our building, because frankly, it needs it. So I think that we need to work on what that plan looks like, but I know I certainly support it, and I've seen the need for it over particularly the last 6 months, and I would imagine most of you all have as well. So no, and new iPhones, no.
Right.
I have my limits. I'm drawing them there. Okay, so unless anyone else, do you all have any new business or ideas you'd like to talk about, or things that you've seen or heard that we should be emphasizing or doing better with or about? No?
Heidi, one of the things I think is worth pointing out that we're not, having our 50-year lawyer luncheon this year, which is, a shame and sad. But that would be the exact kind of event you would not want to have right now. And so, but one thing we are doing, I think this is Alice's idea, was we're mailing out the 50-year lawyer certificates and Alice, are you there? Are we mailing out like a program as well to the 50-year lawyers?
Yes, we're mailing out a program. We're going to mail it to counselors as well. I have it somewhere here. See, isn't it pretty?
Oh, okay.
So it's like some little tangible thing that people will have from this meeting, and we're mailing them their certificates as well, and the letter from Colin telling them how much we regret that we're not having it. We are going to have a 50-year lawyer luncheon in 2021 for this year's class. It's the class of 1970, as soon as it's safe to do that. We would do it in conjunction with a council meeting, but we're not going to forego that for these folks because it's such a special occasion. But Peter, I don't know what else you want.
I think that's something communications wise that I failed to mention, that we're trying to honor the 50-year lawyers in some way that we can right now.
Right. Is there anything else that we can do as a committee or even individually, just to let them know that that's a pretty incredible achievement?
They're all listed in this program. And so if you go through and you recognize people from your community, I think it would be lovely if you sent them a card or a note or an email to just recognize, their achievement and thank them for their service to the public and the bar and the judicial system, and tell them we hope we see them next year.
We can do that. All right. Anyone else have any new business that they would like to cover besides the fact that my lights turn off constantly?
Heidi, if I can just kind of put the renewed plug, I know I mentioned this at the July meeting, but just as a reminder, we are available for CLEs or joining any sort of district bar meetings, anything like that. If you all are having events or attending events, and you need to do a presentation, we did upload or update and upload the overview of the North Carolina State Bar PowerPoint that was made available to all counselors. A new updated version is on EDDS. But if there's anything that we can do to help out, since we are most likely going to be all meeting by Zoom or some sort of virtual platform, those of us in Raleigh can attend meetings in Nashville or wherever the meeting may be. So just let us know how we can help.
Colin?
One thing I just thought about while you were talking about ideas for podcasts, were around the state, we've got a treasure trove of a lot of older lawyers who've been around for a long time, who it might be interesting if we could identify some of those folks just to get some short interviews with some of those folks, a little bit of oral history or something about the practice of law and the changes that might maybe have some interest to a wide group, to be able to, reach out to people in all over the state to sort of recommend maybe somebody in their district. I'm thinking here in Wake County, we've got people like Robert McMillan and Charlie Blanchard and folks like that have been practicing law here for a long time, and might just be a interesting podcast for our members.
That idea. I think that's a great idea. I mean, just first of all, some of them are fabulous orators to start with. They're such storytellers, and I think that's a great idea, actually. I love it.
We have asked the 50-year lawyers to go ahead and do their life in the law essays like they would normally do, and it would show up in the program for the 50-year lawyer lunch. And so they're trickling in. They're not, coming in very fast because we're no luncheon, but that would be a great source, because and you might find some lawyers that aren't, necessarily widely known, but then you read their life stories and it's like, wow, this is so interesting. So that we might use that as a basis for these podcasts. And frankly, I think that would be a real great way to honor these folks as well.
You're right. That's a really good idea. Okay. All right, Ashley and Mark, did we hear that one? That's my unofficial podcast committee.
Heard.
All right, Alice, when the book that you were holding up, when does that come out?
It's been printed
Okay,
and I think it's in the mail. It was supposed to be, am I muted? I'm unmuted, right?
you're unmuted.
Okay, it was supposed to be mailed to all the counselors, but it might have not gotten in the mail until like maybe today. I don't know. I don't know the exact timing on that. We do have hard copies here. They're going to be at the swearing in ceremony on Friday.
So it's in the mail, so we'll get it in December.
In the mail. Oh
Okay.
dear.
All
Oh,
right.
I hope not.
Get mailed at the same time. So Alice has received hers. I have not received mine yet. I put my own address in, so they're sort of trickling out. But yes, they were all mailed USPS first class, I think last Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay.
So
All right.
keep an eye on your mailbox.
Will do. Okay. If there is no further business for this committee, then we are adjourned. Thank you all for sticking around late in the day on Monday. And I look forward to seeing you at the meetings the rest of this week.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thanks.
Thank